My sister mocked my blue-collar life while flaunting her husband's startup wealth. When their debt exploded, my parents demanded my hard-earned savings to save her image, claiming it was my duty. I refused, triggering a war that exposed their secrets and destroyed their leverage forever. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The silence in my living room was so thick, so heavy, that I could actually hear the distinct, ticking rhythm of the grandfather clock I had restored 3 years ago. It was a rhythmic thump-talk that usually brought me a sense of peace, a reminder of the patience required to bring something broken back to life. But today, it sounded like a countdown. Across from me, sitting on the custom velvet sofa I had upholstered myself, were my parents. My mother, usually impeccable in her presentation, looked frayed. Her lipstick was slightly smudged at the corner of her mouth, and her hands were clasping and unclasping around her designer handbag as if she were trying to strangle the leather straps. My father stared resolutely at the coffee table, a slab of live-edge walnut that was currently one of my best-selling designs, refusing to meet my eyes. "I don't think I heard you correctly," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm even though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Because it sounded like you just asked me to liquidate my retirement accounts." My mother finally looked up, her eyes swimming with a frantic, desperate energy that I hadn't seen since my sister, Elizabeth, had failed her bar exam the first time. "Not all of it, Chloe, just enough to stop the bleeding. We did the math. If you and Leo pull from your savings and maybe take a small equity line on this house, since it's fully paid off, thank God, we can cover the bridge loan until Finley gets his next round of funding." I leaned back, the wood of my chair pressing against my spine. "You want me to mortgage my house, the house Leo and I built with our own hands, to pay for Finley's debts?" "It's not debts, Chloe," my father snapped, finally speaking. His voice was rough, defensive. "It's a liquidity crisis. It's a temporary cash flow issue. Finley is a visionary, but the market is volatile right now. They just need a bridge." "A bridge," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. "Finley has been building bridges to nowhere for 5 years, Dad. And now that the ground has crumbled beneath him, you want me to be the foundation." "We are family." My mother's voice rose to a shrill pitch. She stood up, pacing the small space of our living room, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floors I had sanded and stained myself. "Elizabeth is your sister. She is pregnant, Chloe. Do you want her on the street? Do you want your niece or nephew born in a rental apartment? They are losing everything. The house in the hills, the cars, the club membership, the bank is calling in everything. They need a terrifying amount of money by Friday, or the foreclosure process starts." "So, let me get this straight," I said, standing up slowly. I was still wearing my work apron, covered in fine sawdust from the workshop out back. I saw my mother's eyes flick to the dust on my jeans with that familiar look of distaste. "Elizabeth and Finley spent 5 years laughing at Leo and me. They called us quaint. They called us simple. They mocked Leo's work van parked in the driveway. And now, because they leveraged themselves to the hilt for a lifestyle they couldn't actually afford, you want us, the simpletons, the people with the dirty jobs, to fix it." "It's not about that," my father grumbled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's about duty. You have the stability, you have the cash, we know you do. You haven't spent a dime in 10 years. You owe it to this family to step up when things get hard." I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the panic, yes, but underneath it, I saw the entitlement. The absolute, unshakable belief that my resources were simply a reservoir for Elizabeth to drain whenever she got thirsty. "I can't do it," I said quietly. "Can't," my mother froze, "or won't." "Won't," I clarified. "I won't set myself on fire to keep Elizabeth warm, not this time." My mother's face twisted into something ugly, a mask of pure venom that replaced the desperation. "You selfish, jealous little girl. You've always been jealous of her shine, haven't you? You want to see her fail. You want to see her humbled because you're stuck here in this workshop life, while she was destined for greatness. The words hit me like a physical blow, winding me. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was a confirmation that to them, I was nothing more than an insurance policy for the child they actually loved. "Get out," I whispered. "We aren't leaving until you sign a check," my father said, crossing his arms. "Then you'll be waiting a long time," I said, reaching for my phone. Because Leo is on his way home, and he has a lot less patience for bullies than I do. After they finally left, storming out with threats of disownment hanging in the humid afternoon air, I didn't cry. I think I was past the point of tears. I walked into the kitchen and mechanically began to make coffee, my hands trembling only slightly as I scooped the grounds. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache in my chest. I looked around my kitchen. It wasn't a chef's kitchen like the one Elizabeth had plastered all over her Instagram feed last year. It didn't have imported Italian marble or a smart fridge that could tweet, but it was beautiful. Leo had installed the cabinetry himself, perfectly leveled, soft close hinges, solid oak. I had carved the detailing on the crown molding. Every inch of this house was a testament to our labor, our sweat, and our shared vision of a life built on solid ground, not credit. The front door opened, and the heavy thud of work boots signaled Leo's arrival. He walked in, smelling of copper wire and ozone, the scent of a long day in commercial HVAC. He looked at me, took one look at the two half-drunk teacups still sitting on the coffee table in the other room, and sighed. "They came," he asked, his voice low and rumbling. "They came," I confirmed, handing him a mug. "They want $150,000 by Friday." Leo let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "150? For what? Did Finley accidentally buy a small island?" "To save the house," I said, leaning against the counter. "Apparently, the next round of funding dried up. The bank is calling the loans. Mom said it's my duty. She said I was jealous." Leo took a sip of coffee, his dark eyes narrowing. He was a man of few words, but his mind was sharp, analytical. He solved complex system failures for a living. He knew how to trace a problem back to its source. "They have no idea, do they?" "No idea about what?" "About us," Leo said, gesturing around the room. "They see the sawdust on your pants and the dirt under my fingernails, and they think we're scraping by. They think we're hoarding pennies in a jar. They don't know about the contracts. They don't know about the patent licensing for that bracket design I sold last year. They don't know about your wait list." "They never asked," I said softly. "In 10 years, Leo, they have never once asked how business is. They just ask if we're still doing that manual labor thing." "It's better they don't know," Leo said, his jaw tightening. "If they knew the actual numbers, they wouldn't be asking, Chloe. They'd be suing." He was right. That was the terrifying part. My family operated on a scarcity mindset disguised as opulence. They believed that if someone had more, they were obligated to share it with those who shouted the loudest. Elizabeth and Finley shouted very, very loudly. "I told them to leave," I said. "I told them no." Leo set his mug down and pulled me into a hug. His arms were solid, grounding. "Good, but you know this isn't over. Finley is desperate. I heard some rumors on the job site today. He's not just broke, Chloe. He's in deep with some contractors he stiffed on that office renovation. If he's sending your parents to shake us down, he's out of options." I buried my face in his work shirt. "I just wanted them to be proud of me, Leo. Just once. I wanted them to see that building something real is better than selling smoke and mirrors." "They can't see it," Leo said, pulling back to look at me. "They're blinded by the flash, but they've forgotten one crucial thing." "What's that?" "We own the ground we stand on," Leo said, a dark, protective glint in his eye. "They're standing on a trapdoor, and they just handed us the lever." I thought about the file tucked away in our safe upstairs. The file that contained not just our financials, but the deed to the property adjacent to my parents' house. A purchase we had made through an LLC 3 months ago, planning to surprise them by building a guest cottage for their retirement. A surprise that was now curdling in my stomach. They think I'm just their daughter, I whispered, the realization hardening inside me like cured epoxy. They think I'm the little girl who follows orders. They have no idea who they just declared war on. To understand why my mother's words cut so deep, you have to understand the mythology of my family. In the gospel of our household, there were two roles, the star and the support staff. Elizabeth was the star. She was born glowing, according to my mother. She was pretty, loud, and demanding. She excelled in things that looked good on paper: cheerleading, student council, prom committee. She wasn't particularly bright, GHT academically, but she had a way of charming people into doing her work for her. I was the support staff. I was quiet, studious, and good with my hands. When Elizabeth needed a diorama for history class, I built it. When her prom dress tore an hour before the limo arrived, I sewed it. I was the fixer, the reliable one, the one who didn't need praise because the satisfaction of a job well done was supposed to be enough. I didn't go to the expensive private university Elizabeth attended. My parents told me money was tight that year. Elizabeth's tuition was astronomical, so I went to community college and apprenticed with a local cabinet maker. I didn't mind. I loved the wood. I loved the smell of cedar and the resistance of oak. I loved taking a rough, ugly block and revealing the beauty hidden inside. It felt honest. Then came Finley. Finley entered our lives 5 years ago like a hurricane made of buzzwords and cologne. He was a tech evangelist, whatever that meant. He met Elizabeth at a gallery opening, and within months, they were the power couple of the century. I remember the first time I met him. It was Thanksgiving. Leo and I had been married for 2 years. We were happy, tired, and covered in the frantic energy of people building small businesses from the ground up. Leo had just started his own HVAC company, and I was finally getting commissions for custom dining tables. Finley walked in, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck, and looked Leo up and down. "So, you fix air conditioners?" Finley asked, swirling a glass of wine my father had poured for him. A vintage my father claimed he was saving for a special occasion, one he hadn't opened for my wedding. "I design and install climate control systems for large-scale commercial buildings," Leo corrected politely. Finley chuckled. "Right, blue collar, essential, I guess. Someone has to keep the servers cool while the real work happens, right?" Elizabeth laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Finley, don't tease. Leo is very handy, and Chloe makes chairs." "Furniture design," I muttered. "Cute," Finley said, dismissing us entirely. "We're actually in the pre-seed round for my new venture, Vapor. It's going to disrupt the supply chain logistics market using blockchain integration." He spent the next 4 hours talking about scalability, burn rates, and disruption. My parents hung on his every word. They looked at him like he was a god who had descended to lift their bloodline into the aristocracy. Over the next few years, the dynamic solidified. Elizabeth and Finley were the success story. They bought a massive house in the trendy part of the city. They leased luxury SUVs. They went to Chalum and Bali and posted photos with captions like "hustle" and "power couple." Meanwhile, whenever we visited, the comments were subtle but constant. "Oh, Chloe, you're still driving that truck," Elizabeth would ask, wrinkling her nose. "Doesn't it smell like labor?" "Finley just closed a Series A round worth $5 million, my dad would announce at dinner, pointedly looking at Leo. "That's what ambition looks like. He's not afraid to take risks." "We prefer slow growth and zero debt," Leo would say calmly. "Zero debt is for people who don't understand leverage," Finley would sneer. "You have to spend money to make money. You guys play it so safe. It's quaint." But the cracks had been forming for months, if you knew where to look. I noticed things. I noticed that Finley's office changed addresses 3 times in a year. I noticed that Elizabeth stopped buying the ultra-high-end designer bags and started carrying vintage ones that looked suspiciously like good fakes. I noticed that during the last family barbecue, Finley spent the entire time on his phone, sweating, yelling at someone about wire transfers and compliance issues. I had mentioned it to my mother once. Is everything okay with Finley's company? Don't be jealous, Chloe, she had snapped. Genius is stressful. You wouldn't understand the pressure he's under. It's not like making a birdhouse. That was the line that stuck with me. It's not like making a birdhouse. Now, standing in my kitchen with Leo, knowing they were $150,000 in the hole, and coming for my birdhouse money, the anger finally crystallized into something cold and sharp. Finley wasn't a genius. He was a gambler. And Elizabeth wasn't a victim. She was his willing accomplice, addicted to the image of wealth rather than the reality of work. We need to find out how bad it really is, I said to Leo. If they're coming to us, they've already tapped out everyone else. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with before I make my next move. I can make some calls, Leo said. I know the contractor who did the HVAC on their headquarters. He's still waiting on a check. Do it, I said, and I'm going to call our lawyer, if Mom and Dad want to talk about family assets. Let's see what the public records have to say about Finley's empire. The investigation began that night, and what we found was so much worse than a failed startup. It wasn't just bad business, it was fraud, and my parents were walking blindly into the blast zone. The morning after the ambush in my living room, the atmosphere in the workshop was different. Usually, the smell of sawdust and tung oil was a balm, a sensory trigger that lowered my blood pressure instantly. Today, however, the air felt charged with a static electricity that had nothing to do with the machinery. I was working on a commission for a boutique hotel in downtown, a series of reception desks made from reclaimed white oak. It was a $50,000 contract, one I hadn't mentioned to my parents because I knew the inevitable question would be, "Great, so can you pay for Elizabeth's baby shower?" I ran my hand over the rough grain of the wood, feeling for imperfections, but my mind was miles away. I needed to know exactly what bridge Finley was trying to build, and more importantly, what he was burning to build it. At 10:00 a.m., I took a break to call Mr. Henderson, our family attorney. He was an old-school lawyer, the kind who still used a dictaphone and wore three-piece suits in July, but he was sharp as a tack. Leo and I had retained him years ago when we set up our LLCs to protect our assets, something Finley had laughed at, calling it paranoid boomer thinking. "Chloe," Mr. Henderson's voice crackled over the line, warm but professional. "I was just about to call you. The paperwork on the purchase of the lot adjacent to your parents' property is fully recorded. The deed is in the name of Oak and Iron Holdings, just as you requested. Your parents have no idea the sale went through to you. The previous owner kept his word about confidentiality." "That's good," I said, exhaling a breath I didn't know I was holding. "But I need you to look into something else for me. My parents were here last night. They're asking for a significant amount of cash to bail out Finley's company, Vapor. They mentioned a liquidity crisis and a bridge loan." There was a long pause on the other end. I heard the rustling of papers. "It's interesting you mention that," Henderson said slowly. "I have a friend who specializes in commercial foreclosure. His firm has been buzzing about a specific tech entity that's been defaulting on vendors all over the state. Apparently, Vapor isn't just liquidating, they're radioactive." "How bad is it?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Chloe, there are liens against their primary residence. There are liens against Finley's commercial leases, but here is the part that concerns me. I did a preliminary title search on your parents' home this morning, just out of curiosity, because I saw an inquiry flag pop up on the county register." My stomach dropped. "What kind of inquiry?" "A developer," Henderson said, his voice dropping an octave. "A firm called Apex Development. They're looking at zoning for a multi-unit complex on your parents' land. Usually, developers don't pull those kinds of deep-dive permits unless they have a verbal agreement or a signed letter of intent to sell." The pieces clicked together with a sickening sound. "Finley," I whispered. "If I had to guess," Henderson continued, "Finley is trying to bundle his assets to cover his debts. He's likely promised the developer the full family estate, your parents' house, and the adjacent lot, claiming he can deliver the title. He's selling the farm to pay for the cow, so to speak. But he can't sell the adjacent lot, I said, my voice hardening, because I own it. Exactly, Henderson said, and I could practically hear him smiling. He sold a package deal that he doesn't fully control. If he's taken a deposit from Apex based on the promise of that land and he can't deliver, well, that's fraud, Chloe. Actionable criminal fraud. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking not with fear, but with a cold, focused rage. That evening, Leo came home late. He looked exhausted, his boots heavy as he walked through the door, but his eyes were wide. He dropped a stack of papers on the kitchen island. "You are not going to believe this," Leo said, grabbing a bottle of water. "I stopped by the supply house today. I ran into a buddy of mine, Mike. He runs a high-end landscaping crew. He did the work on Elizabeth and Finley's place in the hills last year. The retaining walls, the infinity pool landscaping, the works." "Let me guess," I said, looking at the papers. "He didn't get paid." "He got paid," Leo corrected, "but the check bounced, twice, and when he went to confront Finley about it, Finley laughed at him, told him to get in line behind the venture capitalists. But here's the kicker," Mike got angry. "He filed a mechanic's lien on the house, and when he did, he found out he wasn't the first. There are 9 liens on that house, Chloe. The equity is gone, it's negative. They don't own that house, the creditors do." I looked at the stack of papers Leo had brought, printouts from the public records. It was a graveyard of bad financial decisions. "They're drowning," Leo said softly, "and they want to drag your parents down with them to use as a raft." "They're trying to sell Mom and Dad's house," I told him, relaying what Henderson had said. "Finley is trying to liquidate their retirement home to pay off his bad bets." Leo's face went dark. "Does he know about the lot?" "No," I said. "He thinks the neighbor still owns it. He thinks he can bully Mom and Dad into selling, buy the neighbor's lot with the proceeds, and flip the whole package to the developer." Leo looked at me, a slow, grim smile spreading across his face. "So, he's promised a developer a puzzle that's missing the centerpiece." "And I'm holding the piece," I said. The confrontation happened 3 days later. I was in the middle of staining a walnut dining set when I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. It wasn't my parents' sedan this time. It was Elizabeth's Range Rover. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked out to meet her. She stepped out of the car, looking every inch the wealthy tech wife, despite the crumbling reality of her life. She wore oversized sunglasses, a cashmere wrap that probably cost more than my table saw, and an expression of supreme annoyance. She didn't say hello. She just looked around my property, the neatly stacked lumber, the sawdust collection system, the vegetable garden Leo had planted, and sneered. "God, it's so dusty here," she said, waving a hand in front of her face. "How do you breathe this all day?" "I wear a respirator," I said calmly, leaning against the doorframe of the workshop. "What do you want, Elizabeth?" She pulled her sunglasses down, revealing eyes that were red-rimmed and puffy. "Mom and Dad said you were being difficult. I came to talk some sense into you. Look, I get it. You're resentful. You've always had to work harder for things, and it must be frustrating to see me and Finley succeed so effortlessly." I almost laughed. "Succeed? Elizabeth, your house has 9 liens on it. Your husband is bouncing checks to landscapers." Her face went pale, her composure cracking for a split second before she plastered the mask back on. "That's just administrative noise. It's a cash flow timing issue. Once the bridge loan clears, all of that goes away, but we need the liquidity now. Finley has a deal in the works, a massive real estate play involving Mom and Dad's land that is going to net us millions, but we need capital to close it." "A real estate play," I repeated. "You mean selling Mom and Dad's house to a developer?" Elizabeth froze. "How did you?" "No, we aren't selling their house. We're leveraging the equity. We're going to develop the land, increase the value, and then everyone wins. Mom and Dad get a payout, Finley gets his capital, and you, well, I suppose we could throw you a little finder's fee if you help us with the bridge loan." The arrogance was breathtaking. She was standing in my driveway, asking for my life savings to fund a scheme that would evict our parents, and offering me a tip like I was a waitress. "I know about Apex Development," I said, my voice cutting through the humid air like a saw blade. "I know Finley promised them the full 12 acres. Mom and Dad's 10 acres and the 2 acres next door." "So what?" Elizabeth snapped, dropping the sweet sister act. "The neighbor, Mr. Henderson, is an old fool. He'll sell for peanuts. Finley already has the paperwork drawn up. We just need the cash to secure the option. Why are you being such a barrier? Do you want us to fail? Do you want your niece to grow up poor?" "I don't want my niece to grow up with a father who is a fraud," I said, "and I'm not giving you a dime." Elizabeth's face twisted. She took a step toward me, her finger pointed at my chest. "You are so selfish. You sit here in your paid-off little shack hoarding your money while we are trying to build an empire. You don't understand vision, Chloe. You never have. You're happy with sawdust and sweat. You married a handyman, for God's sake. You settled, and now you're punishing me because I aimed higher." "I didn't settle," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I built. There's a difference. And Leo isn't a handyman, he's a master of his trade, which is why we sleep soundly at night and you're here begging." "I am not begging," she shrieked. "I am demanding. You owe this family. Mom and Dad paid for your braces, they fed you, you are the ungrateful one." "Get off my property," I said. "Fine," she spat, turning back to her car. "But when Mom and Dad lose everything because you were too stingy to help, that blood is on your hands. Finley will find another way. He always does. He's smarter than you, Chloe. He's smarter than all of you." She slammed the car door and peeled out. F the driveway, gravel spraying against the side of my truck. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of pity and resolve. She truly believed it. She believed the lie because the alternative, that her entire life was a house of cards, was too terrifying to face. But she was right about one thing. Finley would try to find another way. And that meant he was going to push the deal with Apex through, regardless of who he had to hurt. I pulled out my phone and texted Leo. "Phase 2 initiated. She knows I know about the developer. They're going to move fast." Leo replied instantly. "Let them run. We're holding the finish line." The fallout was immediate. 2 days after Elizabeth's visit, my phone began to ring. It wasn't my parents'. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Chloe Vance?" a gruff voice asked. "Yes." "This is unverified, but I'm looking for a Finley Doran. You're listed as a reference on a credit application for a vehicle lease. We haven't been able to reach Mr. Doran regarding the repossession of the Porsche Cayenne." "I never agreed to be a reference," I said, my blood boiling, "and I certainly didn't co-sign anything." "Well, your name and social are on the application, ma'am, along with a Leo Vance." I hung up, my hands trembling with rage. Identity theft. He had used our information. I called Leo immediately. He checked his credit monitoring app. There it was, a hard inquiry from a luxury leasing agency 3 months ago and a delinquency notice that had just posted. "He forged our signatures," Leo said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "That's a felony, Chloe." "We need to go to the police," I said. "Not yet," Leo said. "We need to go to your parents first. We need to show them everything. If we go to the police now, they'll hate us forever. They'll say we sent their son-in-law to prison out of spite. We have to make them see it." We drove to my parents' house that evening. The mood was somber. As we pulled up, I saw a sleek black sedan parked in the driveway, Finley's car. He was there. We walked into the house without knocking. My parents were in the living room, looking aged and frail. Finley was standing by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in his hand, looking flushed and agitated. Elizabeth was sitting on the sofa, weeping softly. "Ah, the prodigal daughter returns," Finley sneered when he saw me. "Come to gloat, or did you finally find your checkbook?" "We came to show Mom and Dad the truth," I said, dropping a thick manila envelope onto the coffee table. "We don't want to see your truth," my mother said, her voice shaking. Finley explained everything. He explained how you're trying to sabotage the development deal out of jealousy. He told us you've been spreading rumors to the investors. I haven't spoken to a single investor, I said, but I have spoken to the leasing agency for your Porsche, Finley, the one you used my social security number to secure. Finley's eyes flickered. That was a clerical error. My assistant mixed up the files. I'm handling it. And the liens? Leo asked, stepping forward. He looked imposing, his broad shoulders filling the room. The 9 liens on your house? Is that a clerical error too? You don't understand high finance, Finley shouted, his composure snapping. It's leverage, it's how the game is played, and we are this close to the big payout. Mom, Dad, listen to me. The Apex deal is ready to close. They are offering $2 million for the land. $2 million. That wipes out the debt, it buys you a condo in Florida, it sets everything right. All you have to do is sign the power of attorney over to me so I can expedite the title transfer. My father looked at Finley, hope warring with fear in his eyes. $2 million. Yes, Finley urged. But we have to move now. The offer expires in 48 hours. The only thing holding it up is the adjacent lot. I need to secure the rights to that 2 acres to make the parcel big enough for their plans. I'm meeting with the owner, Mr. Henderson, tomorrow. He's old. He'll sell for 50 grand if I wave cash in his face. I looked at my parents. They were teetering on the edge of the cliff. They wanted to believe him so badly. They wanted the magic solution. Dad, I said softly, don't sign the power of attorney. Chloe, stop it, my mother cried. You're trying to ruin us, $2 million. Why do you hate us? I don't hate you, I said. I'm trying to save you. Finley can't sell that lot. Of course I can, Finley barked. I'm a negotiator. I can sell ice to an Eskimo. You can't sell it, I said, my voice steady and clear, because Mr. Henderson doesn't own it anymore. Finley froze. What? Mr. Henderson sold that lot 3 months ago, I said. To who? Finley demanded, his eyes darting around the room. Who bought it? Apex. Did they go around me? No, I said. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the deed, placing it on top of the pile. He sold it to OA. K and Iron Holdings. Finley squinted at the paper. Who the hell is Oak and Iron Holdings? Leo crossed his arms and smiled, a cold, predatory smile. We are. The silence that followed was absolute. Finley's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. Elizabeth stopped crying and looked up, her mouth open. My parents looked back and forth between us, confusion clouding their faces. You own the lot, my father stammered. We own the lot, I confirmed. And we are not selling, which means your deal with Apex is dead, Finley. The parcel is too small without our land. You have nothing to sell. Finley stared at me, the glass of scotch shaking in his hand. The reality was crashing down on him. The trap wasn't just set, it had already snapped shut on his leg, and he was only now feeling the pain. You little, Finley started, stepping toward me. Careful, Leo warned, stepping in front of me. I wouldn't finish that sentence. You did this on purpose, Elizabeth screamed, jumping up. You bought that land to block us, you planned this. We bought that land to build a guest house for Mom and Dad, I said, my voice rising. We bought it to take care of them. We didn't know about your fraudulent schemes until you came begging for my savings. It's not fraud, Finley roared. It's business, and you're going to sell me that land, Chloe. You're going to sign it over, or so help me God. Or what? I challenged. You'll forge my signature again. The police are already interested in that, Finley. One phone call from me, and this turns from a family dispute into a criminal investigation. The air left the room. My parents looked at Finley, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the doubt take root. They looked at the desperation in his eyes, the sweat on his brow, and the sheer panic radiating off him. Finley, my mother whispered, is it true? Did you forge their names? Finley didn't answer. He just glared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. The deal is dead, I said again, and the free ride is over. The final showdown didn't happen in a courtroom or a boardroom. It happened, fittingly, at a spectacle of Finley's own making. Despite the devastating revelation at my parents' house, Finley hadn't given up. Denial is a powerful drug, and Finley was overdosing on it. 2 days after we exposed his lie about the land, an invitation arrived. It was for a strategic partnership gala combined with a gender reveal party for the baby. It was being held at the local country club, a venue I knew for a fact required a significant deposit. "He's doubling down," Leo said, holding the heavy cardstock invitation. "He thinks if he creates enough social pressure, if he announces the deal publicly, we'll be shamed into selling the land to save face for the family." "It's a hostage situation disguised as a party," I agreed, buttoning my blazer. "He's going to announce the development deal to his investors and the developer, assuming that once the applause starts, Mom and Dad won't have the spine to contradict him. And he thinks I won't cause a scene." "Are we going to cause a scene?" Leo asked, adjusting his tie. I looked at him in the mirror. I wore a simple, elegant black dress, one I had made myself. It was sharp, structured, and serious. "No, we're going to finish it." The country club ballroom was decorated in an aggressive amount of gold and white. There were ice sculptures, there was a string quartet, and there was Finley, holding court in the center of the room, looking manic. He was sweating through his suit, his laughter a little too loud, his eyes darting toward the entrance every few seconds. Elizabeth was there, looking exhausted and pale, forced into a sequined gown that looked uncomfortable. My parents were seated at the head table, looking like prisoners of war. They caught my eye as we entered, and the relief on my mother's face was heartbreaking. She looked small. The arrogance was gone. The room was filled with what I assumed were potential investors, a few local politicians, and the representative from Apex Development, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Sterling, whom I recognized from his website. Finley wasted no time. As soon as the appetizers were cleared, he clinked his spoon against his glass. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," Finley announced, his voice booming over the microphone. "Tonight is about the future of our family with the little one on the way." He gestured to Elizabeth, who managed a weak smile, "and the future of our legacy. As many of you know, I have been working tirelessly on a project that will transform our local community. The Doran Estate Development." A smattering of polite applause. "I am proud to announce," Finley continued, his eyes locking onto mine with a challenge, "that we have secured the final assets to move forward with Apex Development. My generous in-laws have agreed to contribute the law. ND, and we will be breaking ground next month." He gestured for a waiter to bring a document to the table, a ceremonial contract. He uncapped a gold pen and held it out to my father. "Dad," Finley said, his voice dripping with false affection but his eyes hard as flint, "if you'll do the honors, for the future, for your grandson." The room watched. The pressure was suffocating. My father's hand trembled as he reached for the pen. He looked at me, terrified. He didn't want to sign, but he didn't know how to stop the train Finley had set in motion without humiliating everyone. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the hardwood floor was like a gunshot in the silent room. "Actually," I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone, "there seems to be a misunderstanding." Finley's head snapped toward me. "Chloe, sit down. This isn't the time for your little outbursts." "I think it's the perfect time," I said, walking toward the head table. I didn't look at Finley. I looked directly at Mr. Sterling, the developer. "Mr. Sterling, isn't it? I'm Chloe Vance. I believe you're under the impression that the Doran family owns the 12-acre parcel required for your zoning permit." "I am," Mr. Sterling said, standing up slowly. He looked from me to Finley. "We have a letter of intent stating title is clear." "That letter is fraudulent," I stated calmly. "Security," Finley yelled, panic cracking his voice. "Get her out of here. She's mentally unstable. She's drunk." "I'm perfectly sober, Finley," I said, reaching into my clutch. I pulled out the deed, the real one, stamped with the county seal. "Mr. Sterling, this is the deed to the 2-acre lot adjacent to my parents' home. As you can see, it was purchased 3 months ago by Oak and Iron Holdings. Mr. Sterling took the paper. He adjusted his glasses. The room was deadly silent. And, I continued, turning to the room, since I am the sole proprietor of Oak and Iron Holdings, I can assure you that land is not for sale. Not today. Not ever. There is no deal. She's lying, Finley screamed, lunging for the paper. Leo stepped in, blocking him with a solid, immovable wall of chest and shoulder. Finley bounced off him, stumbling back. It's a fake. She forged it. Speaking of forgery, I said, pulling a second document from my bag. This is a police report filed this morning regarding the unauthorized use of my social security number to secure a lease on a Porsche Cayenne. And here, I pulled out a third paper. It is a copy of the 9 liens currently active on Finley and Elizabeth's residence. I dropped the papers on the table in front of my parents. The house is gone, Mom, I said gently. He doesn't own it. The bank does. There is no money. There is no development. There is only debt. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of a carefully constructed reality shattering into a million jagged pieces. Finley looked around the room, his face a mask of terror. He looked at the investors, who were checking their phones and whispering. He looked at Mr. Sterling, who was frowning deeply and putting the deed back on the table. Finley, Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper. She stood up, her hand on her stomach. Is it true, the liens? Liz, baby, don't listen to her, Finley pleaded, sweating profusely. It's a cash flow issue. I can fix it. I just need them to sign. You said you paid off the house, Elizabeth said, her voice rising. You said the notices were mistakes. You said we were safe. We are safe, Finley yelled, grabbing her arm. I just need the land. Make them sign, Liz. Tell them to sign. Elizabeth looked at his hand on her arm, then at his desperate, wild face. For the first time in 5 years, the spell broke. She saw him, not the visionary, not the genius, but the drowning man who was using her as a life preserver. She ripped her arm away. Don't touch me. Mr. Doran, Mr. Sterling said, his voice cold and professional. I think we're done here. My legal team will be in contact regarding the deposit we advanced you. I expect a full refund by morning, or we will be filing charges for wire fraud. I spent it, Finley whispered, his face turning gray. It was used for operational costs for this party. Mr. Sterling let out a short, dark laugh. Then, I suggest you find a very good criminal defense attorney. Finley slumped into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The guests began to stand up, an awkward, murmuring exodus. My parents sat frozen, staring at the papers I had dropped. My mother looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but for the first time in my life, I didn't see disappointment. I saw shame, pure, unadulterated shame. Chloe, she whispered. Let's go home, I said to Leo. I think we're done here. The fallout was swift and brutal, exactly as Leo had predicted. Finley was arrested 2 days later. It turns out Apex Development sent the only bridge he had burned. Once the dominoes started falling, everything collapsed. There was bank fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. He hadn't just exaggerated his success. He had built a Ponzi scheme of personal debt, rotating credit cards and loans to pay off the interest on other loans, all to maintain an image of wealth that never existed. He's currently awaiting trial. He couldn't afford bail. Elizabeth moved back in with our parents. The mansion in the hills was foreclosed on within the month. She lost the cars, the clothes, the status, everything she had built her identity around. The first few weeks were hard. She spent them in her old bedroom, crying, blaming the world, blaming Finley, and occasionally trying to blame me. But reality has a way of sobering you up. I went to see them a month after the party. I walked into my parents' house, the house that was safe, thanks to my refusal to sign, and found them in the kitchen. It was a quiet scene. My mother was making tea. Elizabeth was sitting at the table, no makeup, wearing sweatpants, looking through job listings on her laptop. My father was staring out the window at the garden. When I walked in, the tension was immediate, but it wasn't hostile. It was fragile. "Chloe," my mother said, setting the kettle down. She looked older. The stress of the investigation and the public humiliation had taken a toll. I didn't think you'd come." "I brought some swatches," I said, placing a booklet on the table. "For the nursery. If Elizabeth is going to be staying here, I thought maybe we could convert the old guest room. I can build a crib. Walnut, maybe, something sturdy." Elizabeth looked up from her computer. Her eyes welled up. "You do that after everything I said." "The baby didn't say any of those things," I said softly. "And neither did you really. You were repeating what he told you." Elizabeth shook her head. "No, I wanted to believe it. That's the worst part, Chloe. I knew, deep down, I knew the math didn't add up. But I liked being the successful one. I liked looking down on you because it made me feel safer. I'm so sorry." She started to sob, deep, racking sobs of a woman who had lost her way. I walked over and hugged her. It was the first time we had hugged in years. "I'm sorry too," my father said, turning from the window. His voice was thick with emotion. We were blinded. We thought we were helping. We thought supporting him was supporting the family. We didn't see that you were the one holding the roof up the whole time." "I don't need you to be proud of my money," I said, looking at them. "I just need you to respect my work. Leo and I aren't lucky. We aren't quaint. We are professionals, and we protected this family when you were ready to give it away." "We know," my mother whispered. "We know, you saved us, Chloe, if you had given in. If you had been the good daughter we tried to force you to be, we would be homeless right now." "I am a good daughter," I corrected her gently. "I'm just not an obedient one." The reconciliation wasn't magical. It didn't fix everything overnight. My parents still struggle with the shame of being duped. Elizabeth has a long road ahead of her, single motherhood, bankruptcy, and rebuilding her life from scratch. But she's learning. She got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It's not glamorous. It's not visionary. But it's honest work, and she gets a paycheck every 2 weeks that actually clears. As for Leo and me, life went back to normal, but with a new lightness. The weight of my family's judgment was gone, replaced by a quiet, somewhat odd respect. A few nights ago, Leo and I were sitting on our back porch, watching the sunset over the 2 acres of land next door, the land owned by Oak and Iron Holdings. "What are we going to do with it?" Leo asked, sipping his beer. "We can't build the guest house now. Your parents are full up with Elizabeth and the baby." I looked at the field, the tall grass swaying in the golden light. I was thinking, maybe a larger workshop. I have a wait list for those reception desks. I could use the space to hire a few apprentices. Leo smiled, that slow, steady smile that I loved. Expanding the empire. "Building," I corrected him, resting my head on his shoulder. "Just building, one solid piece at a time." We sat there in the silence, listening to the wind in the trees. It was a simple sound. It wasn't loud or flashy or disruptive, but it was real, and it was ours.